2021, the new WCEG welcomes you. This program is Issues and Answers. I am your host, Norman A. Carter Jr. On your computer or smartphone, you can view us or hear us by typing WCEG talkradio.com in your browser, hit enter, and on the next screen, click the live stream tab. On your smart TV, so easy. Just click the YouTube icon and search for WCEG Network, Issues and Answers. I'll pop right up with all these beautiful faces you see before you. WCEG stands for Worldwide Community Empowerment Group. Our programming goal is to leave you a little bit more informed and a little bit more empowered than you were before you tuned in. Our motto: we speak life into the community. You may like us on Facebook and also view us live there. Follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. You will find us at WCEG underscore talk underscore radio and at WCEG network. Disclaimer, point of honesty, the topics and opinions on Issues and Answers are those of me, Norman A. Carter Jr., and my illustrious guest, and not the WCEG network. As I always say, leave my boss alone. This is my show. These are our words. Friends, firstly, I'd like to thank all of you who listened to my last broadcast on February 8th, 2021, with my guests Ralph Ballant, Chris Simpson, and David Lee Preston. Many of you either phoned in or texted comments and questions. I encourage those of you who missed the program to visit WCEGtalkradio.com or davidleepreston.com to view the program. I appreciate all of you. Towards the end of my program, which was entitled January 6, 2021, The American Apocalypse, I spoke about the involvement of violent and racist police officers from across the country who were active participants in the insurrection attempt in Washington, D.C. In addition, I spoke about the 5-year support of former President Donald Trump from the National Fraternal Order of Police. If you listened, I spoke about how African-American police officers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, protested the support of Trump by Philadelphia's Lodge 5 of the Fraternal Order of Police. The answer they received, we have to follow the national organization, was a verbal slap in the face of African-American police officers and repeated a decades-long insensitivity to the concerns of people of color inside and outside of the police department. This gave me great pause. You see, our African-American public has also become numb to the concerns of African-American police officers. They are unaware of how active we have been in doing our best to stand up for and protect both ourselves and the people we serve. The public is unaware of youth programs we are a part of separate from the police department and how much personal time we donate to this cause. The public is unaware that during demonstrations, when they harass, spit on, assault verbally and physically African-American police officers, how much more difficult they make it for these officers to do their job and to stand up for their kinsmen outside of the department. When these officers are abused by the public, they will often hear, "You see, we're all blue." The public does not care about your race. That is a ploy by racist cops who want to drive a wedge between the African-American cops and the people they are dedicated to serve. This is why I wanted to have this program. They are the not so silent community activists. They are the conscience of large municipal police departments. They intervene simply by being present and letting their co-workers know that certain behaviors will not be tolerated. They cannot be everywhere. They cannot prevent every case of police abuse by certain officers. But what they can do is prevent more cases of abuse that escape public attention. Read my book, The Long Blue Walk, My Journey as a Philly Cop, if you want to see specific instances of intervention of which neither the public nor the victims were aware. This is what we do. This is what we have done. And this is why my guests are here today. We are the we nobody knows. My first guest I'd like to introduce is retired police sergeant, 23 years of experience, Philip Benz. We share a little bit because we were both at one point corresponding secretary of the Guardian Civic League. He has been a special deputy marshal, the U.S. Marshal Service, a family court security officer, a police constable in the state of Delaware, specialist fourth class United States Army. He has an associate's degree in criminal justice and law enforcement administration from the Community College of Philadelphia, a bachelor's degree in organizational management from Eastern University. And he went to Overbrook High, the school everybody in Philly loves to hate, but except the graduates. But Overbrook High happens to be the home of Wilt Chamberlain, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Will Smith, and some guy that I used to run against named Wanza Poole, great quarter miler that went to Overbrook High School, and also Guion Bluford, who was a astronaut and went out there in outer space. Next, I'd like to introduce Mr. Keith Quick. Keith served in the Philadelphia Police Department for 24 years, retired as a detective in the homicide division. They could use your expertise now, sir. He served in several special units, including the Mounted Police Department, and several patrol assignments during his career. He is a member of the Herbert E. Millen 151 Prince Hall Mason Lodge, a member of the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilization, a trustee of the Black Male Community Council of Philadelphia, and a global expansion leader. Next, I have the honor of introducing Dr. Bernita Jones-Wiggins. Dr. Wiggins spent almost 19 years in law enforcement when she retired. She joined the Philadelphia Housing Police in 1994, then transitioned to the Philadelphia Police Department in 1995. In 2004, she was promoted to the rank of police corporal, which we shared. During her police career, she received training in leadership, community policing, you listen to me, folks, post-traumatic stress disorder, Dr. Wanzo, I hope you're listening, domestic violence, mental health, victim assistance, and critical incident response. Dr. Wanzo is our in-house psychiatrist or psychologist. In 2008, she received the associate's degree in science, paralegal studies, and a Bachelor of Science degree in 2011, paralegal studies. In 2015, a Master of Science, and all degrees were from the Pierce College. September 2020, she received her doctorate in the management degree from the University of Phoenix. Today, Dr. Jones-Wiggins serves as chair of a women's group which provides support to victims of harassment, abuse, and discrimination under the umbrella of the Guardian Civic League of Philadelphia. She is an active member of Grace Evangelical Lutheran Church in West Philadelphia, where she serves as the recording secretary. She previously served as vice president of the church council. Currently, Dr. Bernita Jones-Wiggins is a program manager for KenCrest Services. Previously, she had 10 years of service with Devereaux Advanced Behavioral Health, with 6 years as program manager. And last but not least, William Blackman. Disclaimer, I've known Bill since childhood. Bill's a little bit under the weather today, but I really thank him for being with us and being a part of this program. He is a survivor outreach coordinator, Northeast Regional Coordinator, and SRI contractor headquartered in Pottstown, Pennsylvania, United States. He's an experienced outreach coordinator with a demonstrated history of working in the public safety industry. He's skilled in government, emergency management, law enforcement, operational planning, and team building. He has strong community and social services background, and his education goes from something like his background is something like this. He's a recently retired, I believe, first sergeant in the Pennsylvania Army National Guard. He's a retired Philadelphia police sergeant with 23 years of experience. He's a former president of the Guardian Civic League. We'll talk about them a lot, of Philadelphia. He is currently a member of the Philadelphia District Attorney's Truth, Justice, and Reconciliation Advisory Task Force Commission, along with me. He has a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration from Pierce College, and also a Master of Science in Organizational Leadership and Management from Pierce College. Guest, welcome, welcome, welcome to the program. Thank you all for being here and lending your expertise to a public that I am sure awaiting the things you have to say. One of the things that I'd like to talk about first, and I'd like to direct this to Bill Blackman. Our listeners have heard a lot of mention about the Guardian Civic League of Philadelphia. And Bill, I would appreciate it if you could give us a little, as past president of the Guardian Civic League, if you could give us a little background of that organization.
Thank you, Norman. The Guardian Civic League started before I joined the department. The Guardian Civic League, there were a group of African-American officers in 1956, got together in West Philly to talk about the problems they were facing with the FOP, the city administration, on discrimination towards them as Black police officers, and also a way to help the community. They formed what then called the Guardian Civic League. The first president was a young man named Alfonso Deal. Alfonso Deal went on after retirement from the police department and mentoring a lot of us who ended up working in the ranks of the Guardian Civic League. Al went on to be the president of the Philadelphia chapter of the NAACP, and then went on to be a state representative in the House of Pennsylvania. The Guardian Civic League's main function is to try to bridge that gap between the community and the police department, and also try to make sure that the members, the African-American members, and we have white officers who are members also, but mainly the African-American officers who are feeling some type of discrimination, we take the time to listen to them. We take our time to try to work out the problem. And in some cases, the officer may be the one wrong. And then we discuss those things while we see them as being the one wrong. Our past presidents, Jim Holley, Harold James, who also went on to be a state representative, John Green, who became the sheriff of Philadelphia. We had Ron Oliver, Jimmy Gee, myself. The first female was Kathy Battles. And after Kathy, we had Rochelle Bilal, who now is the sheriff of Philadelphia. She's also retired. And her place is Crystal Coleman. Keith Quick, who was a staunch member and big supporter of the Guardians, and still is a big supporter of the Guardians, ran for president. He wasn't successful, but he didn't drop out. He understood the need for us to stay together as a group and to make sure that we can take care of the African-American officer and the community. That's a big, important thing, the community. We need the community and the community need us. Phil Benz, as Norman stated earlier, was one of the recording secretaries of the Guardian Civic League. Good brother. Um, and he can explain some other things in reference to the Guardians and how he got involved in the Guardians. Uh, but I started my journey with the Guardians in 1970 when I joined the police department. I listened to Harold James, who came to the police academy to talk to us. And I knew there was a need for me to be with an African American group. So I joined the department. Harold James used to go around every month and he hit every officer and collect $2. That's before we had payroll deduction. That was one of the things Harold James did. Um, and it was a good relationship. We had a very good relationship. I ran for office in 1972 under Jim Holly. I became the recording secretary under Jim Holly. And each administration up until I retired, I was part of the administration and came back into the administration under Rochelle Bilal, who asked me to come back and to assist her with the membership and to make sure the history is well known in reference to the Guardian Civic League. So that's my nutshell about the Guardians. One more thing about the Guardians. The Guardian Civic League was also one of the 13 organizations instrumental meeting in St. Louis, Missouri, to start the National Black Police Association. That organization still exists today. It's not only in the United States, but we have expanded into Canada and to Jamaica, and England. So they are still doing some good things. And that's really it, Norman, unless you have some other specific questions about the Guardians.
Now, I'm sure we'll be touching on the Guardians throughout this on different things. I think that the Guardian Civic League of Philadelphia became a template for similar organizations in other cities. We were one of the first organizations of that type to get established. So thanks, Bill, for the background. Some of the bigger things that we championed were not only fighting racism in the department, but racism outside of the department. So I'd like to know from any of our guests to jump in and chime in at any time your experiences with contact with dealing with racism, either on the job or in dealing with the community that you served. If anybody wanted to jump in.
Well, Norman, good afternoon, and good afternoon to all my distinguished guests
Good afternoon, Keith.
on the panel here. I just would like to add that we wouldn't want Dave Fisher to be left out, but
Yes.
Dave Fisher was also a past president of the Guardian Civic League and served well. But as far as racism is concerned, racism in the police department in Philadelphia, as across the country, is pervasive. I recall, I believe it was in 1990, where a female police officer was working in plain clothes in the 39th district, and she was assaulted by two uniformed officers in the 39th district. And the Guardian Civic League took issue with that. And of course, at the time, the then commissioner wanted to sweep it under the rug because of the image that it would portray of the Philadelphia Police Department, which has always had some problems when it comes to brutality, and when it came to mistreating the citizens. So we went back and forth with that issue. It was ultimately resolved, and it was in fact swept under the rug, unfortunately, but that was no fault of the activity and the actions of the Guardian Civic League or the Black officers that were within and without the Guardian Civic League. But the officer that was assaulted came to an agreement with the powers to be, if you will, and that was the resolution to that particular incident. And I will never until I transition, forget that particular incident. So that's just one example of many that we could all go on as panelists and probably reiterate to you. But I just wanted to just jump in and just bring that one to the fore, if you would.
Oh, absolutely. And I think one of the things that we want to highlight in this program is that there are a lot of such incidents that don't come to public attention, and that's part of what we'll be doing. In addition to, we'll be talking about community involvement. Uh, I mean, some things are pervasive and they've been going on for a while. And I think you were getting ready to say something.
Well, I was going to say, when I joined the police department in 1981, I was in the first class off the 1980 list. And there were only about 30, 33 of us. Most of us were veterans because you get veterans preference, and we got our 10 points veterans preference. I was the only African American in my academy class, class 252. I didn't have a problem going through the academy. The problem came as soon as we graduated. 10 of us were sent to the 26th district, to Girard and Montgomery, because I'm the only Black person. So the other 9 officers, they put them with officers, they showed them the ropes, they let them drive, they work with them. Me, they put me on a foot beat at Germantown and Lehigh. I walked the foot beat for 6 months. Didn't sniff a car. We would hold roll call. And after roll call, the lieutenant and sergeant would dismiss the squad. He'd say, "Benz, you stay here. Stand there." I'm standing at attention. The lieutenant and the sergeant would walk up to me nose to nose and say, "You know good FMF, we're going to get you. We're going to get you out of here. We're going to get you fired." And, I'm standing at attention. They wanted me to lash out and hit them or give them a reason to be fired. And I took it. I took it. The guys in the squad said, "Hang in there, Benz, you'll be okay. Hang in there, hang in there." But one particular time, my sergeant tried to write 18s up on me. 18s are disciplinary papers. He came by and said, "Ben, sign this." I said, "Sure, Sergeant, what is it?" When I read it, I said, "I can't sign that. This isn't true. I didn't do this stuff." So, make a long story short, I called Guardian Civic League. Thank God John Green answered the phone. I said, "John, they're trying to fire me here. They're prejudiced. The lieutenant is trying to fire me. The sergeant's trying to fire me. I haven't done anything except do my job." John Green got on the phone and called Donald Gravett.
Oh
You
my.
guys know who Donald Gravett
Yes,
was.
absolutely.
Donald Gravett called Captain Campbell in the 26th district. Just like that. The sergeant came out to me. He said, "I don't know what you did, Benz, but I'm going to get you. I'm still going to get you." And grace of God, shortly after that, the Guardians had me transferred to the 18th district, 55th and Pine. And that's when my career really began. But the 26th district, for me, that first 8-9 months was hell. It was pure hell. The sergeant would call me up at night at midnight. "Ben, you forgot to sign your log." "Sergeant, it's midnight. You better get in here. You better, that kind of thing. It was very difficult.
I think the incident that you're talking about, it sort of reminds me, and I'm transposing now about 30 years into present day, where you've had Black police officers standing on the front line at these demonstrations, and you had what I call uneducated or ill-informed Black activists, nose to nose, almost really in close spitting distance to these Black African American police officers, spouting all kinds of vitriol at them. And these guys are innocent. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to have this program, that you have to put up with racist behavior within the department, and then you have your own people turn against you for nothing more than just being there. And Dr. Wiggins, I'd like to bring you into this because I'm sure you have a deeper perspective on this. We were talking about the 39th district where you serve, but I'd like to know, have you, about your experience, either personally or through word of mouth, of experiences in, say, sexism and racism on the department?
Well, I've definitely seen a lot. One, thank you for having me on and, to share my perspective. I've definitely seen a lot going into the 39th district. I came in the year that they were locking up police officers at the district that specific day who had gone out into our community. And I say our community because it's our Black community. And so you had some white officers who were being arrested for some things that they had done. And for me, watching that happen, I kind of wonder, as a Black officer, what do we do? Where do we fit in our community to make them trust us? Because if I'm sitting by and I'm allowing or watching or knowing that these white officers are traumatizing and victimizing our community, where am I going to get the support from the community when I need it? I observed inside the district, there was she wasn't a young officer, she was a veteran officer, and she was called a piece of S by a white officer because they were having words in the operations room. And he just turned around and called her a lazy piece of S. She was Black, he was white. And it appeared that was how things were. It was the norm. Nothing came of it. He didn't get disciplined. And, of course, she defended herself, but it goes on. So as far as the community, a lot of the community, like when you speak to people, once I learned what your topic was, I talked to a couple people because researcher is what I do. The consensus is we Black officers get the job and we don't step in when these things are occurring. If my partner is white and I'm Black and we show up and the white partner is doing things that they shouldn't do, well, we just stand there. We never intervene. We don't provide any interventions to make them feel comfortable. And it's almost like one person said, we forget that we are Black and that we come from that community too.
Yeah, I've, in fact, Dr. Wiggins, the incident that you're talking about, I knew a lot of those police officers at that time. In fact, the sergeant was my corporal at one time. There was a guy named Chinaman who was undercover police officer. Actually, we were somehow or other forced to work with him at one time. In fact, at that time, I was working upstairs in your building in the narcotics field unit. We didn't know each other, but yeah. But Dr. Wiggins talked about this, but folks, I don't think she may not have brought the gravity of that all. These officers arrested hundreds of Black people. Most of the charges were trumped up, pardon that phrase, but they were fabricated charges, and this had to cost the city. Well, they paid out hundreds of thousands of dollars in lawsuits, but I made an inquiry to the district attorney's office about this, and no one's tracking this, but they had to undo several hundred prosecutions. There was a lot of wasted time with the district attorney's office to deal with that. There was a big waste of police time. And for some reason, no one's ever tracked that and the cost that is to the citizens of the city, because that is a cost to the citizens. And what folks don't realize is that funds that would go towards these lawsuits and the time spent by the district attorney's office with these corrupt cops, that's money and time that could have been spent on protecting people in the streets. The people in those communities needed that. And Doctor, you brought up another point, that is that people get the false impression that we aren't doing anything, that Black police officers just stand there and allow things to go on. And that's not always the case. Sometimes it's the case, but I can think about my own personal experiences that sometimes your hands are tied.
Right.
Sometimes your hands are tied. Uh, but where we can, uh, I've known of cases, I've participated in cases where we have physically intervened or done things or said things to stop things. And I think the public needs to be aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wish I could have had the president of the Guardian Civic League here, Miss Crystal Coleman, Officer Coleman. Her husband passed away recently, and his funeral was today. And that would have been an active officer. But all of us here are retired from the police department, and I want the public to know that we're really going to discuss some things that not only existed while we were on the department, but because of our context with people who are still on the department, we know still exist and that are still going on. So it's not like things that we're saying uh, are old news and not relevant. They are. Uh, there's a big concern now about um, staffing, police staffing, and homicides, and not only in Philadelphia, where all of you experiences, but this is nationwide. How do you guys feel about that?
I
Well, good, Bill.
I, I, and we talked about this on our other committee, Norman. We were
Hmm.
talking about defunding the police department.
Yes, good
Um,
topic.
Defunding the police department is not what we need to do, because then you still got the FOP still getting their share of the money, and they're still doing the same thing, supporting bad police officers. Once you defund the police department, then the police department now needs to look at where they're going to cut money at. Well, what community do you think they're going to cut the money from? They're
Hmm.
going to cut it from the black community. Then they're not going to hire black police officers. They're going to cut down on hiring, and then they're going to make it more difficult to get black police officers. It's difficult right now. We had a consent decree that's no longer in existence, and today we have issues trying to get black police officers on the job. Um, there is some things out there on the new contract that say that people now must move back into the city. That's part of hopefully on the contract. So this way you can get more black police officers hired. But once you defund, money is going to come from some place. They're going to take it. Chief Quick is on a committee that's working very diligently and very hard. These black males are working very diligently and very hard on trying to stop the violence in the city of Philadelphia, the gun violence in particular. Instead, if you're saying you want to just take this money from this program and give it to them to do their thing, what they need to do, then I'm okay with that,
Hmm.
because I know they are dedicated trying to help the community
Hmm.
and trying to save young people. Well, you can save young people, and that young person, like each one of us had the occasion to do, that young person may be that next police officer that can help somebody else out.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
Um, Norman, I'd like to say I spent 3 years in the recruitment unit in the police department, and we had a very difficult time recruiting and retaining black police officers. I've gone to high schools, colleges, I've gone to different fairs and, you know, churches, and there's some interest, but there's not sure what the word is. They're very, blacks are very leery of joining the police department. Maybe they can't pass the drug test, or maybe, I mean, how many of us don't know someone who does drugs at one time or another, or was involved in something? But as Bill said, it's a very difficult process, a long process. You have your physical, you have your urinalysis, you have your background investigation. All these things take time, and why should they join the police department?
Yeah, I think what we see is, and another reason why I wanted to have this program is that we see this demonization of all police. and all cops are bad. And I talk about this in my book, where uh, there were a lot of people back in the 60s who didn't want me to come on the police department for whatever reason. I grew up in North Philly, just like Bill. And, it's like that Godfather movie. Cops were feared, they weren't respected. And a lot of cops who came up, who grew up in that neighborhood before us, were known to come back into the neighborhood and use whatever knowledge they had growing up in the neighborhood to hurt people in the neighborhood. So you were looked at as being traitors or turncoats. So we had to overcome that. And today we see that through the media, and that police are being demonized. Your community activists, because of bad cops, demonize all cops. And what happens is there's a reticence among young, qualified African American men and women to take that big step and come on to step into policing. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have the guests that I have on now here, because all of you are accomplished individuals who have dealt with racism inside and outside the department. You grew up seeing things in your communities, and if you're like me, that might have been one of the reasons that you came into the job, other than they paid good money. But you had an obviously a desire to serve, not only during your career, on your off-duty hours, but even after your career. Dr. Wiggins, you're still active in doing things that you were doing probably while you were an active police officer.
Yeah, I am. I think it's important that we try to show the community, especially the younger people. I think that's where we lose them at. If we can't capture them in the ages, the young ages, we used to have, the little gruff dog or something when I was coming up in elementary school. So that was associated with the police officers. You would have, we still have PAL centers, but some of the younger people need to see us having been in the department, having been able to leave and retire and still be okay. A lot of times, you see the police officer behind, have done something and they're arrested. The picture looks bad. Like the picture itself just looks bad to them, and that's why they don't want to become police. But the majority, I read a study said that the majority of Black people in the Black communities prefer to have Black officers. The thing is, how are we going to get them? How are we going to get them? It's hard. I have two perfectly young Black males that work at my current job every day. I'm in there preaching, take the test, take the test. But no, I don't want to be an op. Are you kidding me? Like, they have this mindset that we're all bad. We're snitches. We trade on our Black people.
Right.
We're doing all these things when that's not true.
Correct. And Keith, when they talk about defunding the police, and you worked in the homicide division, I mean, right now you have one group of people talking about defunding the police, and you have another group of people saying we need more police officers in the homicide division. What are your feelings on that?
Well, those people that are saying defund the police are misguided. They don't have enough information. The people that are saying we need more police, specifically in the homicide division, are spot on. We had 499, some people say 500 murders last year. We have 74 murders thus far this year. And if you go to the Philadelphia Police website, PhillyUnsolvedMurders.com, you'll see that you have close to 2,000 murders that are unsolved. And these are unsolved murders in the last 4 years. They're not even going back to say 10 years ago, because it might be 5,000. Matter of fact, it's over 5,500 unsolved murders if you go back 6 years ago. So defunding the police is definitely not the answer. And what has to happen is we have to have quality and qualified supervision within the Philadelphia Police Department specifically, because the homicides that are being investigated are being under investigated, and the detectives are cherry picking those homicides. It's just no way that you can go from 1990, where you have a 70% clearance rate, to here in 2021, you have a 42% clearance rate. I mean, I just can't understand that, because those numbers say that something is wrong internally. Is something wrong internally when you can call downtown a homicide and you call again and you don't get a response. You call again and you don't get a response. You call again and you don't get a response. You make a complaint to a supervisor, then you possibly, and I will say again, possibly get a response. So the families that are survivors of the murder victims, they are underserved. And I know this for a fact because I belong to an organization. I'm the assistant director of the Family of Unsolved Murder Project under the auspices of the Black Male Community Council, and we help solve murders. We solved 2 already in the last 11 months. And the problem is to the community, and if the community knew this, the community would be more helpful, because they can contact an outside agency versus going to the police or even near a police station and help their community. And also, like Phil was talking about, something's wrong, in my opinion, with the process in recruiting. Because my son, and I know my son, he applied to the police department and he was rejected for whatever reason, which was, to me, was not a viable reason. He was rejected. So I don't know who does the weeding out process in the police department, but we need to be more representative, even us retired officers, and get more involved in that process so we can kind to debunk some of the lies that are being perpetuated against our people and against our police officers in our community.
It's funny because Bill, I know you can go back with me several years ago when we talked about bringing in to minorities into the police department, that they were very picayune about things that they would use to disqualify African American police officers. And it seemed as though that wheel is coming back around again. And the viciousness of that even moves into the higher ranks. And I do want to speak about the current police commissioner, Danielle Outlaw, where she is now becoming a victim of that. And it seems to be a campaign. I don't know whether it's racist, sexist, or both, to get her out of office. I'd like any of you to comment on that if you would like.
Since I'm the lady, I think it's both. It's both racist and it's sexist. I don't think that the good old boys were ready. I don't think they were ready. And I don't think that they thought that she would have as much support as she has and will possibly continue to get. When you guys came along, a woman, a commissioner, are you kidding? A Black woman commissioner, they probably would have already hung her somewhere by now or tried to. I think it's important for all of us, and we do have the Guardian Civic League is a great place for all these Black officers, male, female, and women, to come together, meet at these meetings, and come up with ideas and ways that we can support her to get her job done. Because I think she needs to succeed. And I think it's up to us to help push her through that door to help her succeed, because they're going to keep coming.
Some of you may have heard Dr. Wiggins make a comment just a second ago about she's not sure why not, that maybe in the old times they might have hung this woman. And you may think that that's an exaggeration or hyperbole. Just last year, we had a female police sergeant who had filed a sexual harassment complaint against a police captain who was physically assaulted while on duty by a chief inspector. And I don't know whether this has ever been resolved, but no. That's pathetic. Mm-hmm. It's pathetic. And this is still so ingrained in the Philadelphia Police Department. And I'm sure, because I am now in communications with people from New York and New England, that this type of behavior is pervasive throughout the country when it comes to females. But Dr. Wiggins, I have a question for one of our listeners, who is Dr. Wanzo. And her question to you is, what can be done to improve the interface between police and mental health patients in crisis, especially in the Black community?
First, they need to be able to identify it. When you see, like we had an incident here in Philadelphia, officers are not trained well enough. It's not enough hours given in the block in which they give them at the police academy to be able to identify behaviors, body languages. If you look in someone's eyes, you can see when they're disconnected. We need to be able to identify that quickly when you ride up on a scene. When you see people that may know them, their parents or their sisters, you need to be able to have the wherewithal to say, you know what, let's communicate with what's going on out here. If it's safe. If it's not safe, get in your car and wait. But if it's safe enough, try to get that information. I think they definitely need a bigger mental health component put into the police department somewhere, even if that means having a whole unit trained on that. And when you get these 302 calls, that trained officer ride out with separately, because you don't want to be in uniform. A uniform is a threat to someone in crisis. And then they're zeroing in on you because you're in that authority figure. But if you come in and you're talking and you're calm and you're meeting them where they are, then I think that the outcomes will be so much better. So the police department really needs to implement some sort of intervention where these things are identified before they, kill the man in crisis, the Black man in crisis in the street.
I can't keep mentioning my book, but I mentioned an incident in my book, and it's relevant to an incident that happened recently in West Philadelphia, where a man who was in mental distress was running around with a knife, and the police killed him. I think his last name was Wallace. Mm-hmm. It was out in West Philly. Yeah. There are ways to dealing with this, and we have to sort of get rid of this John Wayne syndrome, mm-hmm. where and everything is not absolute, folks. We're not talking about every case, but, is the same. But a person with a knife, they can hurt you, they can kill you, mm-hmm. but today the police officers have so many tools with them. And the other thing is that sometimes it's no shame to back off a little bit and reappraise the situation. It's not about, we can't take a step back, especially in cases of people with that have mental health issues, because I'm sure that there are people out there yelling, he's got issues, or he's got this, or, you know, don't hurt him, or whatever. And you have a parent
Mhm.
who's out there who's watching this going on, and watching her son being killed. We had a police officer from Atlanta who happened to mention that there's only a certain amount of time allotted in academy training for CIT training, crisis intervention training. And my answer to that was, we can perhaps try more in-service training, where outside of the academy. That's something that the public may not be readily aware of.
You know what, Brother Carter? You just brought up a very crucial point, and it lends to that's why we need more African American officers on the street, because I'm sure in the Wallace case, if there were more African American officers involved with that initially, it would not have happened. And I believe, and this is just my strong belief from my experience on the street, if those were black officers, Mr. Wallace would still be alive. Because as you said, it could have been handled differently. But with the people that were handling it, the officers that were handling it, that was the way they would handle it. That's the first way they would handle it, and probably in their mind, the only way to handle it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You
Well,
know, Chief,
go ahead, Bill.
I had I had the occasion. My lieutenant made captain. He went down to the 23rd district, and while in the 23rd district as the commanding officer, one of his officers was involved in a shooting, and of course, the captain wanted to make sure the officer was okay. He talked to the officer, and the officer said, "Oh no, I'm okay. This is only about my my fifth shooting."
Mm.
The captain called me and said, "Bill, I don't understand this. This kid has been involved in 5 shootings. You got 20 some odd years on the job and you ain't been in none yet. I'm confused on what we're training people at and their thought pattern." Keith, you are so correct. The last thing on my mind is to bring out my gun.
Exactly.
Always taught. As you bring that gun out, you can't put it back in.
Mm-hmm.
Because you went to the ultimate level. We can talk, and we can continue to talk. Unless he actually tried to stab me. And I don't mean from a distance, because from a distance you can't hurt me.
Right.
Alma, you're correct. There's always a way to get back in the car.
Yep.
You know, you can call me whatever you want to call me on the street. I know who I am. My people know who I am, and my friends know who I am. So I don't really understand this system today, where everything starts from a shooting. You know, we have these tasers, and everybody don't get tasers. Don't affect everybody. I understand that, but we pay for tasers. I think the city should be giving us some money back, because people ain't using these tasers. First thing they use is this gun, and I'm very confused on that.
Doesn't make sense.
Can I add something to that?
Sure, please, Phil.
I came upon a disturbance house once, and I got there. The district officers were there first, 2 young white officers. When I arrived at the location, I could see them at the top of the stairs. They both have their weapons out, and they're saying, "Drop the knife, drop the knife, drop the knife." So I run up the stairs, and I see they have their weapons pointed at this middle-aged black lady who's sitting at her kitchen table holding a knife. And they're yelling, "Drop the knife, we're gonna shoot." And I go up, I said, "Whoa, guys, put your guns down. Whoa, put your guns down." And I said, "Miss, what's wrong?" And it was boyfriend, girlfriend, her boyfriend left her or something. I said, "Well, we're here to help you, but you have to put the knife down first." So I talked to her for a couple of minutes, and she pushed the knife away from the table. I got the knife, I sat down and talked to her, tried to help her with her issue. The 2 young officers were just, their mouths were open. You know, trying to help the lady wasn't their mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Put the knife down. You know, shoot first, ask questions later.
yeah, one of the questions that we had here is there a fear of blacks
Yes,
that's running?
And
yes.
if you have a fear of black people, and you can't want this job, then you should quit this job. It's not what all black folks aren't that bad. I hear this. The story that people tell. I was in fear of my life. He was running away, but you feared your life, and now we're going to.
Yeah.
We got the
Yeah.
FOP supporting that,
Yeah.
and we got all these other people supporting this BS story. If you are fear for your life, and every day you put this uniform on, you go out there and you fear for your life, then you should quit this job.
Yeah.
I went to work to have fun, to enjoy my people, to talk, to listen, to try to talk somebody else into this job. And I know for a fact that I've had at least 15 people came on this job because of me. Give them a break when you can give them a break. Keith did the same thing. I know he did the same thing because I know Keith and his sister, and I know how they worked. And I know what Phil did because I was down in the gardens with Phil. Bernita, I didn't get to work with down there, but I know how she was with me and as a mentor, mentoring me in the master's program. So I know she was the same way. And Norman, we ain't going to talk about you.
Yeah.
You've been doing since we were in elementary school. Okay.
Well, Dr. Wiggins, you brought up a good point about training. And I have to slightly disagree with you a little on that training, because I believe police have plenty of training. They know how not to shoot certain people. They have training. I think a lot of police officers, it's a mindset problem. They come on the job with a mindset problem.
Right.
I hate to say it, but black equals danger. Black people equals danger.
Right.
And I don't know if training is gonna stop that mindset.
I don't think it will, but I think it will let them know what we're going to stand for and what we're not going to stand for. Because we'll never be able to train people on how to feel or how they feel about being racist. That we're not going, because that's embedded in them. They were born that way. But if we can train them to say, you may feel this way, but this is not what we're going to accept anymore on this police department, then they know right there and then we're not accepting it. We have to stop accepting it.
Yeah, and I think that one thing you guys are bringing up is really emphasizes the need for more African Americans to apply for. I mean, we need an active campaign to go out there and re-educate the public, and this could be what this program is serving to re-educate the public. Number one, to stop demonizing all police officers, to let the public know that we need more black police officers in our communities, not just in Philadelphia, but throughout the country, and that they're qualified. And that, I mean, if this means flooding every municipality with black men and women of character, it's important. Black women, men and women of character to go and apply for this job. People who have the guts to stand up on their own 2 feet and not tolerate certain things, to be very intolerant. And it takes a lot. Everyone can't do that. But I'm sure we have more people who are capable of doing that than what we see being hired at the present time.
Brother Carter, can I just add one thing? And
please.
I know we're nearing the end.
Please.
Violence in this country is a microcosm of the police department, because this is one of the most violent countries in the world. So there's no real intent to prevent violence within any police department in the black community. And we as Africans in America have to do our part to get more Africans that's in America to get involved within this microcosm called the police departments. And when that happens, we probably will reduce a little bit of the violence and racism that's in our society and in these police departments.
Yeah, I agree with you, Keith. Phil, were you getting ready to say something?
Yeah, Norman, what Keith is
Oh,
saying, I just go back to the 70s, the 80s, when we had or more so the 80s and the 90s, when we had the influx of a lot of black officers on this job. Uh, that's what they did. They stood up for their community, and we stood up for each other. And we wasn't crabs in the barrel trying to pull each other down. We cared about each other. We loved each other, and we fought for each other. And Keith is so correct. We need to. When I came on the job, of course, at that time the Black Panthers was out there. I had friends in the Black Panthers and all
mhm.
this. Of course,
Yeah.
talking about one department. And I said, you continue to try to make change on the outside, but I'm going to be on the inside and make my change. And that's how I believe I started my journey. And I know not just me, there are a number, and I mean a number of African American police officers who I know today, still know, who I call friends because they took the same journey I took, caring about the African American community and making sure that they were taken good care of.
Mhm.
The only other thing that we need to do as the uh, old heads, whatever you want to call us, is make sure when we see these young officers out in the street, we need to talk to them. We need to talk to them about the past so they don't make that mistake and not have this job in the future.
Yep.
Talk to young folks out in the street and talk about our career, what we did to make become police officers and why we became police officers and how successful we were after that. And you don't have to give up your community just because you become a police officer.
One of the questions that we received here, both just recently and earlier, is, and it plays into something we said earlier about police departments. Should they be dismantled or restructured? Um, just as our justice system and schools and government. And is this throwing out the baby with the bathwater? And
Mhm.
or does it mean that rather than dismantling and restructuring, do we just pay more attention and be more concerned about what we have?
You know,
Oh, oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Blackman.
go
Oh,
on.
okay. I was going to say, I definitely don't think that it should be dismantled. Here in Philadelphia, we have so many police departments. We have other agencies.
Mhm.
So if that means that, Philadelphia can work alongside and use resources and mobilize the resources that we have, and we have community relation officers, and we have a lot of components that we can use to rebuild, restructure, or try to build to get out and provide interventions. We need the police. We need the police, and we need all these other agencies that are around us, because we have a lot. We have campus police,
Mhm.
SEPTA police,
Hmm.
Amtrak. We have a lot of resources here in
Mhm.
this city that we can get together. Well, they can get together and create some sort of a template where they can go out and start recruiting people of color, start getting into these communities, these neighborhoods, get to them young people. You get to
Mhm.
them young people, then
That's right.
we might be all right. We got to
Yeah.
get them.
We need to
I, I-
restructure the FOP. That's where we need to start at.
well,
Exactly.
yeah.
At the top.
I think we can agree that the FOP it's probably a bigger problem than what the public perceives. Uh,
Too
because
powerful.
when you talk about uh, recidivist police officers who people do, and one of the things that I know that happened years ago is that you had cops that would do whatever offense that would cause them to be fired. When the investigations were done, they were purposely mishandled. They were
Yes.
purposely mishandled so that was the way of getting back in later on through civil service hearings. I'm
Yes.
sure this goes on, and I know outside of Pennsylvania where we have these uh, police certification Unis Post. I forget the exact, what the abbreviation means. But we have here, I'm down here in Georgia, you have police officers that get fired from one department and go right to another department within the same state. It's crazy. And one of the examples, if you think the craziness is that these officers don't know what they're talking about, one of the things I wrote about was a police officer from the 14th district killed his partner. Killed his partner. Fired. Criminally charged. He became friends with the now late and infamous Frank L. Rizzo. Frank Rizzo got that guy back in. First, he put him in the sheriff's department, and a few months later, he was driving Frank Rizzo's bullhorn truck. And in about a year or two later, he was back on the police department. And when I first saw this guy, I mean, my jaw dropped. And I was at court attendance, and the guy there knew me. And he said, "Don't say nothing. Just don't say nothing." A police officer convicted of murdering his partner, reinstated. Of course, the police officer killed, African American, shooter, white. And this type of thing, listeners, we're not just talking about Philadelphia. This goes on around the country. And the problem that we have, and I'm going to get in here because I want you guys commentary on this, is you have all this expertise I'm looking at right here, the four of you, all this great resource, underutilized and unused, and the experience that you guys have in dealing with racism on the job and after job, untapped resource that police departments should be running to you, all of you, for your input and your expertise. And I don't know why that isn't happening. I wish it were. Jump in here, anybody.
That's probably not going to happen.
It's not happening because they don't want to admit that there's any racial problems in the police departments.
That's right.
It never happened until they admit to a problem. And then once you admit to it, then you find those sources that can help you resolve those issues. But until that time, it's just not going to happen.
You have a former homicide detective telling you that they're cherry picking homicide investigations. And you know that the predominance of the people that are murdered are African American people. So what does that tell you?
And Black lives have no value when it comes to them. That's what it tells you.
Well, Dr. Wiggins, you're certainly, I won't say it has no value. It has very little value. The Black life has been devalued historically. And I spoke with the Commissioner Outlaw, about utilizing some of the expertise of the retirees specifically to assist in the solving of the homicides. And I haven't gotten any response as to that, and probably won't, but I understand that in a way, and I want to be very delicate how I say this, in a way, Commissioner Outlaw's hands are tied because, like Bill Blackman said, because of the FOP. So a lot of things that could be enacted probably won't be enacted because of the blatant racism in the FOP. And I will stand by that.
And Keith, I will stand with you in reference to your statement right there. And that's why we in the Guardian Civic League, and we have been talking and we have a committee working on this, on trying to figure out legally how to start another union. We are literally working that issue out, talking to other unions, talking to lawyers, but we as African American police officers and those other officers who care about people's lives and wanting to do the right thing need to pull away from a union that only supports bad police officers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They don't know what they support.
You're right.
They let them do anything they want to do. Just recently, guy leaves the FOP, drunk as a skunk, runs into a lady's house.
Mm-hmm.
Have not heard anything from the FOP putting that person down. Have not heard anything negative yet from the FOP. You see cops, and we go all the way back to Alfonso Deal, when Alfonso Deal talked about them beating Dalbert Africa, stomping him on the ground. You see it on TV. You're seeing it. You're watching it.
And you saw it the other night. Mm-hmm. You saw it the other night.
No, you know what you're looking at. That's not what you're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you brought up Bill Alfonso Deal. The situation with MOVE it has really gotten to be back up in the news, and everyone, at least in Philadelphia and probably outside Philadelphia, knows about the first incident where Delbert Africa was beaten and kicked. This was shown on TV, and it was recently shown on TV on HBO, 40 Hours a Prisoner. And one of the problems with that is Alfonso Deal, as president, he was head of the NAACP at that time, made a statement about that these police officers needed to be arrested. And the FOP sought to sanction him. And several of us Guardian members went to the FOP to protest this. And Al Deal was shouted down on the FOP floor. And there were about 13 of us Guardians who went down there with him. Fortunately, they weren't aware that Al Deal loved to have the press involved. So Al fortunately had the press waiting downstairs because he knew what was going to happen and he wanted to make a statement. But what he did not know is that after he was sanctioned on the floor and shouted down on the floor and we decided to walk out, we had to nearly fight our way out of that building because you had 2 or 3 guys that blocked the door, the exit door. We're on the second floor, that blocked the door. And someone yelled up that the press was downstairs and that's why they moved. Otherwise, you'd have had about 14 black officers fighting about with 200 FOP people. And the FOP has never worked for the interests of not only black males and females, but females in particular.
That's correct.
And a lot of females today have forgotten about the sacrifices of people like Penny Brace, if I may bring her name up, because without Penny Brace in Philadelphia, our police department would look a lot different. She was a real champion, and she's never gotten the credit she deserves. But there were a lot of African American police supervisors who put themselves on the line, and they're responsible for African Americans coming on the department, particularly in the 60s and 70s. And I'm glad you mentioned Donald Gravatt. He was one of these behind the scenes guys who really did a lot for us. And we need more people like that to stand up, not just in Philadelphia, but throughout the country.
That's how I got on the job, Norman. I took a test. I got notified on a Thursday that they wasn't going to hire me. I saw another young officer, and we were talking at my pastor's house, and he said, go down to the 22nd District and see Donald Gravatt. Tell him your story. I went down and seen Donald Gravatt on Sunday night. I received a phone call. The call stated, Frank Rizzo looked over your application and decided that you need to start the police academy Monday morning.
And the rest is history.
Wow.
It's history, brother. But
and I want the public to understand that we're not talking about things that are being done untoward to help black people. Come on. We're talking about black people who have been uh, denied access to the job wrongly,
Mm-hmm.
wrongly,
It, it, it,
and that being corrected.
and you know what the issue I had? I had a job out of school. I went to school from to 12 o'clock, and I went to work. I went to work at a toy factory on Germantown Avenue between Lehigh and I can't remember the street next down. I can't remember which one, but on Germantown Avenue, right from Medicine High School.
Somerset.
Okay, so it could have been. Well, anyway, the business went they went out of business. So my investigator said, well, since we can't find the business, I can't put down that you work. And then he said, also in the neighborhood you live in now, nobody knows you. I said, well, why don't you go down to the neighborhood where I grew up at? Oh, I can't do that. I gotta go where you live at now. Or they don't know me because all I do is come in the house, go to work, take care of my wife. You know what I mean? That's all I did. But those were the issues I had, and I don't think I did anything wrong.
Yeah, we had stuff like if your father knew a number writer. Do you know any number writers in your district? Okay,
Mhm.
well, no, we can't hire you.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, that type of nonsense. Did you have fantasies about your mother?
right.
They would ask you these type of questions
Mm-hmm.
when you came on. Um, this is one question that's something that bothers me, and I see that we have some questions on, but the insurrection of January 6th, uh,
Mm-hmm.
I talked about that a couple of weeks ago. But did any of you, seeing that so many police officers were actively involved in that,
Yes.
say to yourselves, this is what we've been talking about, and you haven't been paying attention?
Uh,
Yes, and
yes.
one of them worked
Yes.
for a recruitment office.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I wonder if that's one of them who did the investigation on Keith's son. You know, we
Could have
have
been.
not looked at the whole factor yet. There are a lot more. I
Wow.
looked up yesterday. Don't get the names, but they said Pennsylvania police officers arrested for being down at that event.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder who they are. You know, where they come from. Pennsylvania is a big state. How many in Philadelphia? Because I know they were down there from Philadelphia. They left out of Bucks County on that bus, and I know they were from Philadelphia. And I need to get rid of those folks because those folks are hurting black people.
Yes.
Yes. Again, Norman, a microcosm
Mhm.
of
Hmm.
of the world, a microcosm of our country, a
Mhm.
microcosm of our city. But I have a Donald Cravat story too. Um, uh, I was recovering from a gunshot wound. I got shot on duty in 1972. So I had been on limited duty for a while and they were putting me back to work. This is 74. And um, I wasn't fully recovered, but the safety office at that time was a problem and still may be. Those are civilians that make decisions about police officers being fit to go back to work. So I was attempting to get a job inside. And of course, the safety office said they couldn't help me. Donald Cravat was instrumental in my winding up in the 5th district. So that's how I did my tour in the 5th for a couple of years, which I hated. But we could get into another story about racism, but I'll leave that there for now because I know, Norman, that you have some
Yes.
examples of the 5th district.
Yeah. I'm sure my listeners have heard my stories about the 5th and Northwest Police Division when I was there. Uh, Completely corrupt from the top to the bottom. Racist, absolutely racist through and through.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a shame. It's a shame that the harm that was done to people, uh, both in the 5th and the 39th district, those are the northwest sections of Philadelphia, and I, I, these type of things happen in New York, in Washington, D.C., in Baltimore, where you have actually, it's almost an organization of bad cops that go around terrorizing African American community. And when you break it down, 98% of those cops are white, and you might have 2% are blacks who just get caught up in it, and don't see it, cannot find themselves a way out. And that's sad. I mean, there's always a way out. But a lot of you guys have worked in high crime areas. I know, Keith, you had a lot of experience in homicide. Phil, high crime areas was a part of what you did every day in the highway patrol. And
I could tell you some stories.
I'm sure. Bill, I know that you don't might not. I'm sure you don't want to get into detail in it, but you're one of those few guys who were at one point in your life where you might have thought you were in Vietnam, and you were wearing a blue uniform. These guys are all heroes, folks, in one way or another. From Dr. Wiggins, Bill Blackman, Keith Quick, Phil Benz. These are resources. These are resources that need to be utilized, that are totally underutilized by our country, not just the city of Philadelphia, but by our country. They have resources, they have experiences that people need to be tapping into. As we prepare to close out, guys, it's a great program, but I like a closing comment from each of you, if I can. Jump in, whoever. I don't want to put anyone on the spot in particular, but anyone can jump in and vent your soul.
I think I just want to close with not all officers are bad. We have some good Black officers, and Black officers are doing really good things here in Philadelphia. We have our community relations officers who are doing the Zoom, the internet, that kind of thing. And I think to get to the bottom of our issues, we have to get together and find out what the root causes are, and then take it from there.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Phil, did you want to jump in?
Just thank you for the program today. We have a lot of Black retired officers like myself that are doing great things in the community. You don't always hear about it, but we are an available resource. We all do different things. At my church, we have a food giveaway program 3 days a week. I help veterans try to get more benefits, African American veterans mostly, trying to get their benefits. So we just don't know what all their benefits are. Then they've been in the military and they have an honorable discharge. But this was a great program, and I'm glad you invited me on. And it was a good subject, and hopefully maybe one day we can do it again.
Absolutely, I sure hope so. How about you, Keith?
Yeah, I would like to, number one, commend you for your fine work with your book and for serving the citizens of Philadelphia. As you said, the people here on your show, they are a resource, and they are heroes. I've known Bill Blackman for I'm not even going to say how many years. Known Phil Benz for, we won't even talk about him because that gray around his chin. And now I've had the pleasure to meet Dr. Wiggins. But the criminal justice system is a maze. And if, in fact, you've never been involved in the criminal justice system, you can get lost in that maze. In that maze is over 350,000 unsolved murders around the country. Now, you think about that number, 350,000 unsolved murders over the last 15 years. And 70% of those murders, those people look like us. The families are suffering still because their loved ones' death murder has gone unsolved, and a lot of times, in a lot of instances, unattended. I work with an organization, like I said, called the Black Male Community Council. You can look at our webpage, BMCCP. That's our webpage, BMCCP, Black Male Community Council of Philadelphia. Or you can email me at keithquick1@gmail.com. keithquick1@gmail.com. We look into what we can do to help you get some resolution to your loved one's murder. I'm also in contact with Terrence Jones, who looks into homicides committed by police officers. And yes, as you stated, police officers do commit homicides. So, as a resource, anything that I can do, my organization can do, Family of Unsolved Murder Project, Black Male Community Council, keithquick1@gmail.com. We don't just work for communities in Philadelphia. We work for communities nationwide, specifically African American communities. All police officers aren't bad. All Black police officers don't have anything negative to think about police. About the public looking at police a certain way. We're used to, as police officers are used to people looking at them a certain way. That's part of the job. Okay, but we know who we are, as Bill said. But with that, I'm going to digress.
Keith, thanks. And really, Keith, thank you for some really pertinent information that people can take advantage of. Thank you so much. Bill?
Norman, I first want to thank you for sending me the invite and then ask me if I can invite some other retirees to your program. I sent out 4 invitations. 3 of them responded within seconds to me. Didn't care what day, didn't know what time, they responded within seconds.
Wow.
The information to you so you can then invite them. This is the type of individuals that I had my career with. People who cared. People who, it's not about them, it's about the public, our people, and these young Black police officers out there on the street. They care about them. Like Keith, Phil, and Bernita said, all police officers are not bad. There are some bad Black police officers. There are some bad white police officers. But I will tell you 90+% all police officers are good. It's just that damn 1% out there is driving us crazy. And because we have a union that wants to support them, that's how we're looked at, the way we looked at. You know, just when you talked about the insurrection, and I put on my Facebook and I said, I want to see all these folks now talk about Blue Lives Matter. I haven't heard from y'all because those white people were killing police officers and beating up police officers. But I don't hear nothing from y'all on this Blue Lives Matter. You know, the only time you hear it was when Black people were doing something saying Blue Lives Matter. Well, what was the difference? The difference is this was worse than anything that I've seen in a lot of years. You know, I've seen the riots and all that. This was the worst thing that I've ever seen in my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that I can relate this to is when Adolf Hitler took over Germany.
Mm.
The
Amen.
exact same thing that Adolf Hitler did, that he tried to do. And the Blue Lives Matter people, you didn't hear nothing about them putting those folks down. I wonder why.
I have a. Go ahead.
That means that they might be part of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you looked at the Good Morning America today, you would have seen the African American police officer who was confronted by Blue Lives Matter people, and one of them showed a badge. I won't go through the whole story, but I'm sure it's going to be out there on YouTube. A couple of questions before we close. Mr. Quick, is your organization on social media?
Yes, it is. We have a Facebook page, Black Male Community Council of Philadelphia.
Okay, thank you. And one other question, and we can go through this real quick. Would any of you do it all over again?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You mean this program?
I enjoyed what
Well, you know what, Norman? I have to look at the experience that I had as a Philadelphia police officer, the experience that I had, and the people that I met. Okay. So I would do it all again, but they would have to pay me a lot more money.
There you go. There you go. Phil?
Unequivocally, yes. I would do it again. As a rookie, there was so much I tolerated that I just didn't know. I didn't know. There was so much racism that I tolerated from other police officers that I was a rookie. I didn't know. But as I gained more time on the job, and I began to get my footing, and I said, I'm not tolerating this. This isn't right. And then when I made sergeant, I had even more input into daily activity. Just real quickly, I saw 3 Caucasian officers beating a suspect on the street. I don't know the situation. I just saw pulled up and they were beating a guy. And I pulled up and I said 2 words. I said, that's enough. And they stopped, only because they saw the sergeant's stripes. And that was a pretty good feeling.
This is what I mentioned. I thought I mentioned this at the beginning of the program, and it was an oversight, but the public does not know the times that African-American police officers have interceded to save people's lives, to prevent bad arrest, to prevent someone from beaten to death. There's just no way of telling. But I think, in closing, that whenever you look at an African American police officer, look at that person and think about the steps and the walk and the journey that this police officer has had, male or female. You really need to do that. The next time you think about spitting in an officer's face when they're standing on the line in front of a demonstration, or just demonizing police officers just for no reason, all police officers. Think about that the next time you try to discourage a young African American who is entertaining the idea of coming into law enforcement. Why would you do that? Think about it. These ladies and gentlemen who have been with us today have shown you, have told you about how they have made a difference, not just on the job, but off the job, and retired everyone and still involved in their communities. How can you not respect that? How can you not respect that? We have 1, 2, 3, well, it's 4 of us here. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We are just, as Keith would say, a microcosm of what's out there. There are many of us out there still trying to help, still trying to serve. Some of us are retired. Some of us are active. A lot of us are active. And I just want to thank my guests today. You guys have done a tremendous public service, tremendous. And I think that this program is going to be viewed by people, and it's going to make a difference in some people's lives. And that's important. And perhaps at sometimes we can revisit this again, as Phyllis has suggested, where we'll have some better stories. We'll have, Bill, perhaps some updates later on what's going on with the FOP. and what the, you know, what's being done, because that affects everybody, not just on the job, but off the job also. And it affects people in the community. So guys, once again, I'd like to thank you all for joining in the program. Thanks for spending the time with us at WCEG. This was a great, informative program. And I will be talking to you guys sometime soon. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening and watching.
All right. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right.